Welcome, James Doty, to this World Happiness Week and the World Happiness Fest. This whole week, celebrating March 20th as International Day of Happiness wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't because of the legacy and the insights and the wisdom that you bring to all of us. You are, as you know, you are a personal hero of mine. I admire your work. And just for the few out there who don't know you, basically, James Doty is a professor at Stanford University and the director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education Seeker. And of course, he serves on the board of a huge number of nonprofits. I really love everything you do, but right now, uh, you have something in the making. It's made already, but actually it's coming live May 7th, which is a new book about, it's called Mind Magic. And I think that we are going today through so much in this world that one of the focus of your book is the power of manifestation. And I would love that maybe we can explore in this time what can we do in order to manifest world happiness. So welcome, James.
Well, thank you, Louis, for having me. And it's always a pleasure to see you. And you're actually one of my heroes. So thank you for all the work you do in the world. And World Happiness Day. It's interesting. You mentioned my new book. And in many ways, I think it offers some insights and ways to manifest your own happiness. And what I mean by that is, first of all, when people talk about manifestation, oftentimes they look at it through the lens of woo-woo or pseudoscience. And the reality is actually that it is not. As you know, even in the context of religion, every religion is based on compassion and because that's how we thrive as human beings. But as people evolved religions, which manifest as compassion, the underlying theme, which has now been proven by science, is that compassion is good for you. And so religions have built a dogma around that reality, that being compassionate, being kind, being helpful, being thoughtful is very, very powerful. And it's not only powerful for the other person, it's very powerful for you in terms of mental and physical health and longevity. So in an interesting way, manifestation, as it's been promoted, which was not based on science at all, actually, there are certain truths in that. And what I mean by that is that neuroscience, in some ways, has now understood how manifestation works, and in reality, how each of us can, if you will, maximally manifest. And what I mean by that is every one of us every day is trying to make something happen for ourselves, for others. Because we don't understand necessarily the neuroscience or the techniques, most of us are not very good at it. What has happened, though, in sort of general context of society, people have heard this term and they've heard about vision boards and writing things down and visualizing, and actually those work. But here's the interesting aspect of that, which I think is very helpful for the listeners. And what that is many people, when they think of happiness, are confused by the narrative that Western capitalist society has created, that happiness relates to power, wealth, and position. And I would suggest to you that that is 100% false. Now, that's not to say you can be in that situation and not be happy or be happy. That is certainly possible. But the key is how you relate to the world has to be about others, has to be about being of service. All of us, when we're born, have a spot within us that can only be filled by human connection and being of service to others. And the Western capitalist narrative tries to substitute things for filling this void And the reality is it is only filled by being kind, being thoughtful, being compassionate to others. And so this is really an important difference. And this is also a difference between understanding what people want versus what they need. And again, especially a young person, if you survey young people, they'll sit there and say, I want celebrity, I want money, I want to be an influencer. And unfortunately, this is a dead end in terms of anything related to happiness. And so when you're talking about manifesting, it actually works best when you realize that the greatest likelihood of you manifesting is when you change your perspective away from yourself to looking at through the lens of kindness and compassion and human connection. And if you focus your manifestation on that, you get all the other things if that's actually what you really want. And so I would suggest that the key or the path to happiness is actually caring for others around you. And this will have significant benefit, not only towards the other person, but it will have significant benefit in terms of your mental and physical health and your longevity.
So interesting what you are saying, because normally when we look at manifestation is from an individual perspective. Is I want to manifest to have a better life, to have maybe my family. But what you are bringing here in my magic is the whole process. I think that you even have 6 steps in order to manifest collectively. So this is super interesting. Can we go deeper into how to do that?
Sure. So one of the things that drives people, unfortunately, is a fear that they're not adequate enough. And also the narrative that it's okay to say, I want. And what I mean by that is, I want a fancy car. I want to live in a mansion. And part of this is because, as you probably know, especially in Western culture, there has been a period that lasted for a few decades where parents were encouraged to reward their children for just signing up. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's a race and there are 10 children who run the race. Well, everyone is quote unquote a winner. And oftentimes they even don't recognize the person who won the race and came in first. And unfortunately, what that has done to a lot of people is to create this narrative in children's minds that they don't really have to work hard. They just have to show up, if they even do that. And they should somehow be rewarded. And that is not how life works, not real life. And this is the sad part, that individuals want to be celebrities or influencers or wealthy because they somehow think that if they get that that void we talked about is going to be fulfilled. But the way to maximally manifest is to change how you see the world. And what I mean by that is, when you're striving for me and want stuff, that comes out of a scarcity mentality, which actually stimulates your sympathetic nervous system, which is your flight, fight, or fear response. You're afraid that if you don't get X, Y, or Z, that you're diminished. And this is the driver. And what we know is that actually the way we flourish and thrive as human beings is actually if we can engage our parasympathetic nervous system. And when this system is engaged, we're more open, we're more generous, we're more thoughtful, and our physiology, both mental and peripheral physiology, work its best. When you engage in those types of acts, your pleasure and reward centers increase activity. You're happier, you feel better. A secondary effect then is that, of course, you have the release of a variety of different hormones and neurotransmitters. And in terms of mental health, one of those is oxytocin, or the bonding or love or nurturing hormone or neurotransmitter, but there are a variety of others that affect your peripheral physiology, resulting in your cardiac function being improved, your peripheral vascular function, your blood pressure being lowered. It also has an effect on your immune system. It decreases the production of inflammatory proteins. And ultimately, it increases the length of your telomeres, which increases your longevity. And what we know is that the brain is actually lazy. And unless you intervene, it oftentimes takes the easiest path. The other aspect is that what many people don't appreciate is that we are bombarded with sensory information, because that's what makes us who we are, by about 10 million bits of information every second. As a result of that, 99.99% is ignored because a lot of it goes to maintaining bodily functions or homeostasis. But we, on a conscious level, have access to about 50 to 100 bits of information a second. And why is that important? It's important because if you follow these various techniques, which I outline in the book, you can do something that's called value tagging. And that allows you to embed an intention into your subconscious. And we have something called the salience network, which is part of the cognitive networks in our brain. And they're not an isolated area, but they're actually different regions that work together for one purpose. And in fact, they may change even sometimes depending on what that purpose is. So when you are able to embed your intention into the salience network, and there's a part of that that's the attention network, it is like releasing, if you will, a bloodhound in search of accomplishing your goal or your intention. And what I mean by that is that I'm sure you've been at a party and it's very noisy. And what happens is you'll hear your name. Even in all the noise, you will respond to your name because it's deeply embedded in you. Well, a similar example, which happened to me a few weeks ago, I've been working on a project and I was at a coffee shop, very noisy, but I heard somebody talking about the exact topic that I was interested in. And I turned to them, introduced myself, and we engaged in a conversation, and now we're working together. So I embedded that intention, and it made me attuned to events in my surroundings that would actually allow for that to manifest. And when you do that, then that engages what we call, and I'm sure you know, our executive control network to put together on a cognitive level, what you need to do. It affects the default mode network, which is associated with mind wandering. And all of these ultimately work to manifest your intention. So while on the one hand, yes, you can get whatever you want through these different techniques, but the best way and the most likely way is if it's associated with caring for others. And then you get all the other stuff if you so desire it. The other trap that people get into, though, is craving and focusing on a goal, which can be distracting for many people. So this is something to keep in mind, that a goal is fine, again, if it's in service of others. That being said, though, oftentimes people sacrifice the present moment and ignore it to focus on a goal that's in the future. And the problem is, if you're focused on that goal and that becomes so important, you're not present for what's happening. And you're incredibly disappointed if you don't reach the goal, which has a huge negative effect on your physiology. So while it's great to have goals, you cannot be attached to a goal. You may want to have it happen. And in some ways, this is also about manifestation, because you can't also expect for things to manifest, which fundamentally are impossible. As an example, I want to walk on Mars next week. That, I assure you, is probably not going to happen. Now, I never say impossible, but that is pretty close to impossible. But my point being that it has to also be within the realm of possibilities and with your abilities. And it also is not one that you can put a time frame on. There's certain goals that I have put into my intention or manifestation, and they still haven't materialized. And it's possible they may not, because sometimes what we think we want isn't what we really need. So I think that gives an overview of things. And as you mentioned, there is a six-step method that utilizes not only all the neuroscience we know, but all the different techniques that are now available to help one manifest with the greatest likelihood that that's going to occur.
Wow, it's so interesting. And actually, when you were explaining, I just came from Auroville in India, and it's one of those cities where basically the only requisite to live in the city who belongs to nobody is to go into understanding divine consciousness. So basically, everybody coming to Auroville is in the path to divine consciousness. And it was so interesting because I think it was a Thursday, and I was running my program, the Chief Wellbeing Officer program, that night, and I was sitting with I would say the leader and the pioneer on conscious fashion, Uma. She has Upasana, that's her brand, and she runs the brand from Auroville. So we were talking, and I was telling her about the importance of joy and happiness for everything that we do. And suddenly she said, of course, Luis, I mean, I put joy at the core of my company. And since I've done it, my company is going amazing. You cannot imagine how I transformed. So as he was talking, I was thinking, well, I love to invite her to my program. I didn't finish even saying program, and she said, well, I never anybody asked me to present this to anybody. And and I was like, okay, I can't believe this. So is that manifestation? Is what you
Yes,
came up with?
absolutely. Mhm. And what people don't realize is that when we are filled with good intention, it has not only effect on our brain and the vibrations in our brain, and I know people often use the term vibration again in a woo-woo fashion, but our brains do oscillate, or vibrate, but we also have vibrations within our heart. And what's amazing about that is when you talk about bioenergy, our heart actually sends vibrations about 5 to 6 feet beyond us. And the interesting thing about that is that depending on your mental state, the vibration that you carry can impact everyone and everything around you. And this is why, as an example, you'll see a group of women who get together and perhaps live together, and over a few months, their menstrual cycles align with each other. And so the effect of vibration and this interaction to create a oneness is extraordinarily powerful. And that's how we're designed to be. And that's why I say, when you're talking about manifesting, it all recognizes the nature of our connection and ultimately our oneness as human beings, and our oneness with nature, and our oneness with other sentient beings.
There is one stage in what I learned about Hindu or India and Vedas manifestation, which is surrender. So in the end, you plan everything, you kind of get a plan, but then you surrender. What is surrender in your 6 steps, and in your theory?
Well, so what is the opposite of surrender? It's attachment, right? And as I was saying earlier, you have to not be attached. You have to surrender to the situation. Because again, when you're attached, fundamentally that creates a negative state that will affect you. Because attachment creates craving, which ultimately creates suffering if you do not manifest that intention or realize that goal. When you surrender, an interesting thing happens because you are no longer absolutely focused on that thing. And oftentimes people will do that too and ignore every other positive thing in their life just to accomplish the goal, somehow thinking that that goal is more important than friends, relationships, connection. And it's a very sad thing because, you know, you'll see somebody accomplish a goal, but there's no one there who cares about them. And it's a very sad statement. So by surrendering, it actually results in you being in the present moment and connecting with all of those around you. And this is why many people say the most important thing isn't the goal, it's the journey. Who are you with? What are you sharing on your path? And if you have this openness, if you surrender and accept what's out there, the likelihood of actually getting to your goal happens more likely than not because there are many people trying to help you reach your goal.
That's so beautiful. And I mean, and we are here for world happiness. What we set as the World Happiness Foundation is the goal of 10 billion uh, happy by 2050. But then we detach. It's like, okay, let's see what happens. We might be 10 billion. We're 8 billion now in the planet, but that's really the ultimate goal. So hopefully we can get there. Before we ask you for recommendation for world happiness, something that I'm very curious, because as part of your book, and this is, I think, the power that you bring as well from the science perspective, is what you call how we change brain structures. And then you focus on four different practices. One is attention, the other one is meditation, the third one is visualization, and the third one is compassion. Can we can you explain a bit what is the difference between the fourth? I know that it takes long, but maybe we can focus a bit on the fourth and how you relate those four to manifestation.
One is relaxing the body, right? And what happens is when you're anxious or tense, and for many people, because of baggage they carry from their childhoods and never knowing what was going to happen, they carry this muscle tension within them. And so the first thing you have to do is to get rid of that. And this is, you could call it progressive muscle relaxation. Because when your muscles are tense, you're in and of itself stimulating your sympathetic nervous system, which shuts down everything because it's now reactive, and it shuts down access to the executive control networks, which give you the ability to remember events, experiences, and make much more thoughtful decisions. So as a result, instead of being thoughtful and discerning, you simply become reactive, which limits your choices. So that in and of itself is learning that technique is liberating. The other aspect is what's the second one? It's
Attention, meditation, visualization, and compassion.
let's see. I guess it's I don't think I call it that, but I can't remember that. But anyway, the other part is attention, because if you're distracted by being tense all the time, you can't focus. Once you're able to relax, then you can attend. And for many people, that may require a breathing technique, which will shift you again from your sympathetic nervous system to your parasympathetic nervous system, which is where your physiology works its best. And you can do this through breathing. You can do it through a mantra. You can do it by concentrating on a candle, as an example, or a light. So that's the next technique. The other is you have to change your dialogue with yourself. One part of mindfulness, as you know, is letting events just pass you by and not being reactive to them. And that is fine. The challenge there, though, is actually changing them to a narrative of self-compassion or positive affirmation versus negativity. When you say, I can't, when you say it's not possible, then that becomes truth. And so, again, another technique to shift you over from being hypercritical to being one of self-caring is changing that dialogue. Because when you do that, the next thing that happens is you look through the world through a different lens. You recognize that everyone is suffering, and that when you are able to see that other people are suffering, like you feel you suffer, then you're much more motivated to be understanding, because so often we make judgments about people's behaviors based on what we think they're thinking, not necessarily what they're really thinking. Because so many people carry baggage, which results in prejudices and misinterpretations into their daily actions, which have nothing to do with the daily interaction. It's a trigger that they have been carrying with them. When you're thoughtful and recognize this reality, you're much more gentle in your interactions with people. And that we were talking about vibration earlier, that positive vibration that you're sending out, it has a calming effect on individuals and actually allows them to feel that they're not being judged, that they're being accepted, that you're respecting their dignity. So that's very, very powerful. And then, of course, we talk about manifesting your intention. And all of this builds up to that, because at every level, you're shifting from being in fear to being generous, thoughtful, open. And every time you take that step, that increases the likelihood of you manifesting what you wish to manifest, and which will allow you to flourish as a human being. And again, you have to understand, though, sometimes on an unconscious level, you actually are more thoughtful about what you need than what you think you need or what you want on a conscious level.
Wow, that's so deep. I really appreciate that, and I know that uh, many people, because we are celebrating happiness as a human right, really, and as a birthright, really appreciate your intuition and your science, because this is the neuroscience of manifestation. This is your new book, and this is why we are so thankful that we can really bridge spirituality with science in a really practical way. I think this is the key ingredients of the wisdom. How do we move from one to another, and then actually we do something about it. So do you have a final recommendation about world happiness, if we were to achieve happiness for as many people as we could, how do we manifest this?
Well, first of all, we have to be happy. And unless we're happy with ourselves, it's hard to encourage happiness in others. And happiness is not necessarily about what I want. Certainly, if you have shelter, if you have security, if your family has food, that gives you the opportunity to focus on others. If you don't have that, that makes it very, very challenging, because then you do have to turn into, in some ways, being selfish about yourself and for those you care for, otherwise you won't survive. But if those needs are met, you have a wonderful opportunity to be able to change the lives of another person in a positive way, which will be the fundamental aspect of happiness, being able to improve the world for all of us. when you're able to look through the lens of compassion and understand that the person you're looking at is you, then it's very hard not to care. And so if you can change your mindset and see every other person as being like you, wanting the same things as you, you can change the world and make everyone happy. And it's unfortunate that oftentimes people will sit there and they'll say, well, I don't have this, I don't have access to that, I can't really help anybody. The reality is, every day, each one of us has the ability to improve the life of at least another human being. And ultimately, being able to do that is what happiness is all about. And so, whether it's simply smiling at another person, giving a person a hug who's in need or lonely, sharing a meal with somebody, opening a door, or simply listening, every one of those acts is an act of service. And every one of those acts will not only help the other person, but they will increase your happiness and obviously increase their happiness.
Let's do that. Smile, hug. Yeah, we're gonna hug soon in Bhutan, I'm sure. But thank you so much, James. This is so inspiring. I'm really looking forward for so many people to get your book in a few months. In a couple of months, it'll be there ready, but it's ready for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and everywhere. And thank you again. Thank you for being of service to so many and an inspiration. And I really thank you for everything that you do at who you are. Thank you.
Okay, my friend. Thank you. Be well. We'll be in touch. I'll see you in Bhutan.
See you soon. Take care.